Welcome to the Diversity and Inclusion on Air podcast. This podcast is a program of the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges Diversity Matters Initiative. The podcast explores various issues related to diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession and provides the AAVMC an opportunity to offer ongoing diversity programming to our member institutions as well as all veterinary professionals. My name is Dr. Lisa Greenhill, and I am the Chief Diversity Officer here at the AAVMC. Now, if you have not been under a rock for the last few years, you know that the summer of 2020 was quite the doozy. Certainly the murder of George Floyd sparked a bit of a racial reckoning, certainly here in the US, but also globally. Certainly tentacles of that continue to persists now, and that's great. We needed this kind of energy. We certainly did not need to see another murder, but extrajudicial murder at that. But we did need to kind of have this time to really start thinking about how to move things forward in the larger society, but also for us specifically in veterinary medicine. And so, in the wake of those events in vet med, we certainly saw the number of affinity groups grow, but we also saw organizations, legacy veterinary organizations, really big and old ones, and new ones as well as industry groups create new diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plans and committees and coalitions, really looking to create new opportunities to advance discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also think about things like scholarships and programming for BIPOC veterinarians as well as other folks with marginalized identities within the profession. Today, we are going to be featuring a conversation with some wonderful colleagues from Diversify Veterinary Medicine Coalition, Dvmc. My guests today are Dr. Kemba Marshal and Jennifer Ogeer. Did I pronounce that right, Jennifer? Okay, great. So why don't we get started? As we always do on our show, we ask our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So Jennifer, we're going to actually start with you.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Greenhill, for having us here today. It's a pleasure to finally be in the virtual room with you. I've sort of heard so much wonderful things about you, read your books, read your work, and it's just really been an honor to sort of follow you on your journey and to be part of this podcast today. So my name is Jennifer Ogeer. I am a veterinarian. This is my 30th year being a veterinarian. My background primarily has been in academia, in emergency medicine and critical care. My current title is the Vice President of Medical Science and Innovation at Antec Diagnostics, which is part of Mars Pet Care and also Mars Veterinary Health. That is part of Mars Vet Care. I'm thrilled to be a part of the Dbmc as one of the founding members, and I currently serve as the vice chair at the Dbmc. I work with a number of other organizations. I'm currently on the executive for the Black Veterinary Association of Canada. I'm a Canadian expat currently living in the United States. I'm really pleased that I have the opportunity to do the DEI work across different countries and across in a sort of what I consider a borderless society that allows us to talk about this work in a way that's meaningful, but also impactful. So thank you.
Thank you. And please, on this show, we are very informal. My name is Lisa. Just call me Lisa. We are just pals having a good old conversation here. So we are also joined now by Dr. Courtney Campbell. Welcome. We are going to come back to you in a few minutes. Kemba, why don't you tell folks about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I echo Jen's warm appreciation for your invite, Lisa. This is the hot show to be on. So it is not lost on us that we have made the cut. Everyone, Kemba Marshal, I graduated from the University of Florida. I've had a career that's been everywhere from clinical practice to corporate veterinary medicine. Now I'm on the research development side. I have the absolute honor and privilege to serve as executive consultant for the Diversify Veterinary Medical Coalition. As Jen has already shared, we are delighted to be here and really focused on action that makes our profession more diverse, equitable, and inclusive for all.
Awesome, wonderful. And as I mentioned, the super surgeon has joined the chat.
Hi, Lisa. How are you? I feel like I am in very distinguished company. I've got you, Jen, Kemba, all on together in one place. I mean, this is must-see TV, right? Right here. This is must-see TV. Listen, as I try to decrease my heart rate from being with such distinguished company, I'll tell everybody my name is Courtney Campbell. I'm based out in Ventura, California. I'm a surgeon out there, small animal surgeon. And just like a lot of veterinarians, I've kind of done a little bit of a national tour in effort of internships and residencies. So, Connecticut, by far, everyone knows, and this is true, the most boring state in the union. I left that state and now I'm in California. And it's been amazing. I'm one of the founding members of the Dbmc. I'm in the incoming chair for the ACVS DI committee. I've served on possibilities as well. And of course, the AAVMA DI commission. So it's just an amazing inertia and momentum to be part of, keeping in mind, always cognizant that people have laid the groundwork in order for this inertia to continue. So I try to keep that in mind at all times. As we push forward, we got to remember those who laid that groundwork for us to push off on.
All right, great. Well, welcome to the show, each of you. I am so happy to have you on the show and to have this conversation. So let's dig in. So Jen, we're going to start with you. What is Dvmc and what is Dvmc's origin story?
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa. The Dvmc, as you mentioned in your introduction, is the Diversify Veterinary Medicine Coalition. And really what we are is we're a group of leaders, animal health professionals, veterinarians, really working to accelerate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the veterinary profession. And we're doing that today really to strengthen the talent pipeline that we have. And, we'll talk a little bit about sort of how we're actually tactically thinking about what our pipeline looks like for tomorrow in terms of BIPOC representation in veterinary medicine. And really how we started is, I'd say we started with a group of very passionate, dedicated individuals, a very united front of people who came together because I think, as you're well aware, Lisa, we have a shortage of veterinarians currently. And not only a shortage of veterinarians, but we have a shortage of diversity of veterinarians in our profession, which really threatens our ability to serve our communities, to provide pet care, and to support the people who are those pet parents. And so I think part of the mission of what we started to do was founded in how do we address this current crisis and how do we sort of bring together, leading organizations. We have a number of key founding sponsors. And if I may just list some of those, Boehringer Ingelheim, we have the Mars Veterinary Health Group that includes, the Veterinary Centers of America, Banfield, Blue Pearl, Zoetis, Hills, Pet Nutrition, the IDEX Foundation, Antec Diagnostics, and we also have a number of other affiliate groups that we've been working with, and that includes the Multicultural VMA. We've also been working with the NABV and of course the AAVMC with Dr. Andrew McCabe and others. And so I just really want to acknowledge that, this really has been a partnership and an alliance of really, key people in this industry who are committed to this work and are very passionate and dedicated to us starting this work, not just as founding members, but continuing to work on our mission. And I know Kemba is going to speak a little bit about that here shortly. So thank you.
So yeah, Kemba, tell us, what are the goals? We know that there's the shortages and all of that, but what is Dvmc really doing out there?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. So I might just pivot, which is a word that we've been talking about a lot, and hand that off to my peer, Courtney Campbell, and really have him speak to the goals of Dvmc, and then I'll follow behind and add in my 2 points.
Great. Oh, Kemba, you're going to tag me in on this tag team approach, and I'll take the tag. but I definitely think you could probably do a little bit more service. Listen, we're at a pivotal moment here. We're at a momentous occasion. Here I am in a clinical environment, right? I'm wearing a scrub top. I'm in the hospital. I'm doing surgery. And the reason why I find that to be so auspicious, the reason why I find that to be so important is because I'm also joined by somebody from academia, and I'm joined by two sort of industry powerhouses. And if that doesn't represent the diversity of this profession, I don't know what does. Right. And that, I think, is the key goal for Diversify Veterinary Medicine, the Diversify Veterinary Medicine Coalition. It's to diversify veterinary medicine profession. But I don't want the word diversify to have an outsized impact to the other ideals that we mentioned. There's a reason why we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I just feel like it's impossible to achieve one ideal without the others. Right. And so if you simply have diversity, but you don't have equity, you're not inclusive, and people don't feel a sense of belonging, then you don't have justice. And that essentially, for me, is what the Diversified Veterinary Medicine Coalition is all about. It's not only just to diversify the profession, but it's also to make sure that this profession experiences all the other beautiful benefits of diversity, which include equity, inclusion, and hopefully the result is that people feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah. Kemba?
I thank you. I will add to that. I will say that, we talk a lot about what the Dvmc is uniquely suited to do. And when we think about those things, we think about, number one, funding individuals, be it veterinary professionals, veterinary technicians, students, to number one, attend continuing education meetings. The reason that all of us know one another is we have the ability to, number one, take off work. Number two, buy that plane ticket. Number three, register for that conference, stay in that conference hotel, right? All of those things take resources that we know not all of our veterinary professionals have the ability to leverage on their own. So number one, we think about travel grants to get individuals to continuing education meetings. We also talk about scholarship dollars for pre-veterinary students and for veterinary students. We know that there are sometimes innumerable barriers, but we know that when you think about financial barriers, those sometimes impact BIPOC communities in a very unique and distinct way when you think about getting into the veterinary medical profession. The third thing that Dbmc is uniquely suited to do is have paid internships for our pre-veterinary students in the organizations that make up the coalition. Right? I mean, so often we hear that, someone is, trying to get those hands-on animal contact hours. Someone is trying to get experience so that their resume is weighty enough to be considered for veterinary medicine. And when you're having to do that work and you're unable to earn income doing that, we also see that as a barrier. So those are the three things that we're focused on: those travel grants, scholarship dollar support, and paid internships.
Oh, that's great. So shameless plug, yesterday at AAVMC, and certainly last week, we hosted a two-part webinar series on some of our admissions research, and really kind of zeroing in on those experiential hours. And we know that BIPOC students, first-gen students, students from low-income backgrounds, and rural students in particular, all of those kind of identities tend to overlap in our data set, right? But they all report having more difficulty getting experiential hours, right? And not only do they have more difficulty, they really typically are not in positions to take unpaid, positions to kind of get that experience, right? We find that they actually do get paid. They somehow duct tape and paperclip the hours together, right? But they might not have the diversity of hours because they had to get hours through work. They might have not been able to go to some of these really great meetings, like AAVMC will be going to the annual Biomedical Research Conference for minority students and the SACNIS meeting, which, both of those meetings target underrepresented, racially and ethnically underrepresented students. These students typically are not able to go to those kinds of meetings, to see our tables, the college's tables, those kinds of things. And so, these opportunities really do open doors for students, right? So, the scholarship thing, oh yes, that's another one of Lisa's soapbox issues. So I'm delighted to hear that pre-vet students are also kind of getting in on the opportunity, because, there's funding needed all across the, up and down that continuum. So that's great. So with all of the new groups, because there have been, so many after 2020, there was like an explosion of groups, which is a good thing. Of course, I think that, now we're looking 2 years past, some groups have not vanished, but, maybe the intensity level has, softened a bit. I'm really curious about what role do you see Dvmc having very specifically in this space? We know what you're doing that is unique, but how do you see yourself, as a coalition really making that difference? Jen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I think, Kemba sort of hit a bit on it, right? We have a really strong corporate donor base. And so we're very fortunate to sort of have that support. We have the ability to not only give travel grants to these major conferences, but also now to provide scholarships on an annual basis to pre-veterinary and veterinary students, to allow them to realize that dream of becoming a veterinarian, which we know a lot of times one of the biggest barrier to doing that is the financial aid or the support. And so I think, the internships that we can also offer, those paid internships through our organizations and also the affiliate groups we work with, is another unique opportunity we have to not only support the learning and expose these individuals that are these scholarship recipients to the different career paths that are available to them, or even to different experiences. And through those internships, we now have the additional opportunity to be able to provide mentorship, right? To be able to guide them, to be able to say, who would you like to speak to? What do you think your career path looks like? And who's a resource that can sort of maybe give you that guidance on what you need to do to ultimately say, listen, I want to be a specialist. So I want to be somebody who really, cares about zoo animal medicine. And I want to sort of, get that exposure. And so I think, this community that we're building around us, and the committee members we have, and also the affiliate group members we have, we've really come together in a very dedicated, involved, and engaged manner to ensure that, we are sort of targeting what are those barriers, what are those challenges that don't enable, BIPOC individuals to get into this profession and stay, and even to say, when I get there, how do I continue to feel like I belong here, that I'm in an environment where I feel cared for, I feel that, I'm safe. And I want to stay, because it's not only that we are struggling as a profession with not having enough veterinarians, it's also about recruiting veterinarians and retaining them in this profession when we come from a background where sometimes at a very early age, we're discouraged as someone of BIPOC origin from thinking of this as a career path for us. And so I think, this starts in how us uniquely at the Dvmc supports that educational journey, that mentorship, providing those opportunities with the financial support all the way from a very young age to adulthood, to actually thinking that this really is, in my opinion, the best profession to be in and stay in on your life's journey. So thank you.
Do you really, really love the profession? You seem like you really, really love it.
30 years later of critical care, Lisa, and I would do it for another 20 years. All of my adrenals are quite large right now, but yes.
So, how will you know that you've made a difference? So folks that know me well know I love assessment, I love evaluation, I love knowing okay, so how do you know that you've made a difference? So Dr. Marshall, Kemba, how do you know? How will you know when Dvmc has made a difference?
Great question. Great question. So first, let's talk through like, how do we even get here today?
Yeah.
So once we have the individuals who say, this is important and should be done, right? We have to do the infrastructure. We had to get our nonprofit status. We have to get our funding organizations. We have to get our founding partners. So all of that infrastructure work, standing up the website, you know, all of those things are things that we've already been able to accomplish. And then when you think about that, we also want to make sure that we have the right people on the team, not just those of us that you see now, right? But the lawyers who support us and making sure that everything is done decently and in order, our finance team, our marketing team, right? So getting all of the people to really push this coalition forward. And then when we think about things that we've been able to accomplish so far, we've awarded 20 of those travel grants. And when we award those travel grants, really what we want to be able to do is create a space for those travel grant recipients to share their stories, to have their voices heard. So when we're bringing them to these meetings, we do things like networking. You know, here are the folks who make up the coalition. You know, we've got CEOs, we've got vice presidents, we've got surgeons, we've got these specialists who are saying, yes, like, come talk to us. You can see that we're real people. And then the other thing that we want to do is give them the confidence to share your why, share your journey, right? So that we understand that these folks may not be household names the way you yourself are, Dr. Greenhill, but that is very important to get into the habit and the practice of when you're supporting an individual, the first thing you should do is ask them, what can we do for you, right? We're not going to assume, we're not going to do like a cookie cutter package, but we're going to work with our travel grant recipients and say, what would you like to say? What venues would you like to speak at? What topics would you like to cover? We've got 5 of our pre-veterinary students who have already been awarded, right? So these 5 students, we wrap our arms around them, we holistically support them through their process, realizing that they're students, right? Students are human beings, and these students may change their minds, which is fine. But if these students say, my desire is to go to vet school, then we want to walk with them lockstep to know that we can do everything that we can to support them. The other thing I would say is, you know, we also want to be very intentional about how we continue to put this work forward. Lisa, as you mentioned, you know, in 2020, if you think about the billions of dollars corporately, which were pledged to address social injustice, racial inequities, and when you look at the actual dollars that have been deployed and the actual work that has been done, there's quite a gap there, right? So we also want to make sure that this is not something that was important because we all saw those horrific images in 2020 when we were shut up in our homes, but we really understand the systemic issues that not only have gotten us where we are here today, but left unchecked, what those systemic issues will continue to do, not just to our profession, but also to our society as a whole, right? So the evergreenness, the sustainability of the coalition is quite important to us.
Great, great. So tell us, you know, this wasn't on my list, so everybody keep calm and just roll with me. So how are you really kind of holistically supporting these pre-vet students? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I think that, you know, a lot of times we narrowly focus on the pre-vet student for the purposes of like, okay, so we're just getting them to the application. Like they have to jump through these little, you know, hoops and, you know, run these races to get to the application. But we also recognize that one, they're already in an academic environment that they might be, you know, one of few in some places, certainly not everywhere. But also recognizing that that transition can be a really big jump, right? And a lot of times, you know, I tell people all the time that a lot of times it's rarely actually about the academics. It's about the lack of psychosocial support that leads to a decline in the academics, right? And so, tell us, could you explain a little bit more about, how you're supporting some of those pre-vet students? Because that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we are partnering with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And what we have said to them is we want to lean on their expertise in identifying these top scholars and making sure that these students have expressed an interest in matriculating, going on to veterinary school. So also we know that it's important that we want all of these students to be a part of the Thurgood Marshall Leadership Institute. Because to your point, some of it is, how do you give the presentation? How do you hop on the podcast? How do you have that elevator speech when someone says, you got the 3 minutes or the 3 bullet points? All of that comes with practice.
Right.
In addition to making sure they're supported at the Leadership Institute, we also know that our commitment is that they will, again, have those paid internships that we will organize for them. So all of these students I'm in contact with, they all have my cell phone number, and it's anything from, hey, has the scholarship money, been transferred to my bursar's office, to, I was just on the phone with one of our pre-vet students, and we were talking about the list of schools that they would be applying to. And I didn't hear their home state school. And I said, when you're thinking about the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, I would strongly encourage you to apply to your in-state school. And the person said, hey, the issue is that application is due tomorrow or something. There was a really tight deadline. And I was like, get off the phone with me, brew that pot of coffee and make it work. Because the difference that you will come with the level of potential debt, if you're coming from an in-state school versus an out-of-state school, is worth you not sleeping tonight. I'm like, I promise you, if it's worth it, like, you will do this application and get it done tonight. So we think about that, just the how-to and what should I be thinking? And, oh, let me ask you this question. And then I think the third thing I would say is, trying with a really intentional focus to say, if there is any question, there is no bad question, there's no inappropriate question. Literally, let us help you, because the things that you aspire to do, maybe not that Kemba has done all of those things, but between the Dvmc and our extended network, I know someone who has done that very same thing. So let us walk with you so that you can, miss some of those potholes that we have stepped into, right? And then how do we give them the space to still say, you're still going to be a young person in college, right? And you still will make decisions that may not be what we would make, right? So how do we support you in those things? Because of course, when you're thinking about, like, when is the deadline, right? In a perfect world, you're thinking about that months ago, right? So we can avoid the all-nighter, but you know what? It is what it is. So when I think about that holistic support, it's really just being there to guide, to answer questions, to help.
That's great. That is great. Yes. In a perfect world, we wouldn't procrastinate. And yet this is the world we're in. So
yes.
And Lisa, I just wanted to make a couple of comments to follow Kemba, because, I think she hit some key points there, which is, what is that personalized direction and guidance that we want to give these young people, because it will be, we can talk, and we always say this, right? We can talk, but talk doesn't matter if it isn't followed by meaningful action, if it isn't followed by giving people that mentorship and the guidance they need. And, I think we all probably, Kemba and Courtney, myself and others who are part of the Dbmc, and even our affinity group members and colleagues who are, so aligned with us, we all have a personal story of potential struggle and of a day where we didn't want to keep doing this. And I think, when we share those stories and we let people recognize that out of sort of sometimes those darkest days, that courage builds and there is strength, right, to be that light. The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman always sticks with me, like, you see the light and you have to be the light. How do we help these young people shine? And sometimes it's that personalized journey and that story to tell. And, I know we all have that. And I think that sometimes is that one glimmer of sort of hope is what keeps them sort of on the path. And so I just want to acknowledge all my colleagues, including Kemba and Courtney, for being so open and always sharing their story and always being so generous with their time to help young people see what that path looks like and to get there.
Oh, that's so great. And yeah, those personalized stories are really meaningful. They give hope, but they also speak to, validating feelings and validating, really what end up being shared or replicated experiences, right? I think that that's really important. And even as somebody who just gets to hang around all you fabulous people, because I'm not a veterinarian, I have to remind folks of that every now and again. Last week I was at a veterinary meeting, Kemba and I were chatting about this, and I've also been really open about it on social media as well, that I was at a meeting and, there were you could count the BIPOC folks on your fingers and have one hand and have fingers left over, right? It was, we're looking high and low here, right? And so, and I had commented on social media, I was like, wow, there are people here not speaking to me. Is it me? If it is me, I brushed, I bathed, I did, the morning routine. So I know it's not that. Why is it? Is it just because, it's early, we haven't had our coffee? Is it because folks just don't speak? Or is it because I look like this, right? And as a person living in this kind of skin, right, those are questions that pop up in the back of your head. And and I posted, I tweeted about it, I posted about it. And really, for listeners who are not BIPOC, the number of BIPOC professionals who were like, oh yeah, girl, that's going to a veterinary meeting. And I was like, now granted, I've been around for 20 years, right? And there's a part of that shared experience that was, yeah, you're right, I've been around for 20 years and you're right, this is sadly a veterinary meeting. The flip side of that is that's a veterinary meeting. Just say hi, it's not hard. Right? But students, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of, say, a pre-vet student who might be first or second year in their undergraduate career, that could be crushing, right? That experience could really be crushing and saying, wow, this is so not a welcoming space. And to be able to at least have other people that say, no, I've been around for 30 years and they still don't think. No, so I'm I'm not dragging y'all, I'm really not. But I think that it's important for us to be, for students that we are recruiting in, that we're transparent and that they have people to talk to about these things. It's not just about calling Courtney about a broken leg, because that's as sophisticated as my conversation and Courtney's broken and then he's fixing it, right? It's really about, hey, I had this experience and I kind of need to bounce it off so I can get some thoughts about how to proceed and is this okay for me, right? I think it's really important for folks to have that reality. So having said all of that, Courtney, what do you see as the biggest challenge for Dvmc and groups like it?
Yeah, this is, as I mentioned before, this is a pivotal moment. I think what sometimes your greatest strength is sometimes your biggest challenge. One of our strengths that we're bringing to the Dbmc is the diversity, but one of the biggest challenges is the diversity of the profession. It is the fact that you have academia in this conversation, industry, clinical veterinary medicine, and then all the species specialization, bovine practitioners and small animal, large animal, and the list goes on. It's how do you appeal to all of these disparate groups that are under one umbrella in the profession and let them know that in every professional valence that's within veterinary medicine is understanding that we can all benefit from having a diverse team. We can all celebrate the wins of having a diverse team, the fact that it improves creativity, innovation. Plenty of studies indicate that it improves the bottom line. If you're veterinary economics, of the veterinary economics persuasion. So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges is with the Dbmc, is understanding that we want to appeal to the profession at large. And the profession at large is comprised of a variety of disparate groups, and letting them know and spreading the good news that diversity is beneficial and creating equitable situations and inclusive scenarios. Also, I think patience, right? One of our calling cards, or one of our hallmarks, is that we are action-based. We want to do something about it, right? Do something about the diversity crisis. And when you are action-based, sometimes it's hard to be patient, right? And so we look at these numbers, the statistics, and let's be clear about something. Because we are had this coalition of consciousness, what I call it, post-murder of George Floyd, these numbers and these statistics are entrenched. They are inveterate. They're chronic. They've been there for a while. And so you have to have this level of patience to say, it's going to take a while to change it. And occasionally I'll get the folks who are not necessarily, initiated or not necessarily in the know of DI. And they'll be like, Courtney, man, I've been seeing there's no diversity in our profession, man. What can we do about that? I'm like, we could have started 20 years ago, you know what I mean? So, or longer. And so that's the challenge, is making sure that we create a profession that retains folks, the talent that we have. It continues to spread awareness. We're patient, and we try not to sort of boil the ocean, right? And I try to remember that. It's like, we can do something, but we can't do everything. And I think that's why I really appreciate your question about what is the Dbmc uniquely suited to do. And I look at it as just one big happy family, or one big team, and we're all in the same league. And some teams are really good at this, and some teams are really good at that. So I think for me, it's number one is understanding the diversity of the profession. That creates a challenge. 2, being patient and just that slow, steady pressure. And then 3 is awareness, is helping people understand that, what? Diversity crisis. So what? The fact that it hurts people. And then now what? What are we doing about it? And so if we follow that paradigm of what, so what, and now what, I think we can really move this forward.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing up that patience piece, because it is very difficult to be patient, right? It's very, very difficult to be patient. And folks are always like, hey, I'm looking for, this unicorn, like, a Black male, something, a specialist, board certified in blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, have we made one of those? Like, I don't know one of those yet. And if we haven't, it might, if they're already in vet school, we might see one in 5 to 7 years. But if not, it could take 10 to 15 years, right? And so really kind of thinking about what that looks like is important.
And sorry to interrupt you, but to couple that with what you were saying as far as the psychosocial support, is that you could be along the pipeline, right? You could be along the pipeline, and just my personal experience is that, there are tips, tricks, inside knowledge that you may need to get over that finish line. And if you don't necessarily have that support, then that number that you stated, like let's say 10 years, that could actually stretch to 15 years or 16 years, simply by not having that level of support. And that, I'm speaking from personal experience. So I certainly think that if we have this talent pool in the pipeline, making sure that you retain them and making sure that they actually complete that journey is, I think, for me, the key. It's not just a matter of having them in the journey. It's like, how do you foster and shepherd them along? Because other people who are in the majority are also being shepherded, just in a variety of ways.
Yeah. Such a good point.
Lisa, I just wanted to add one thing to, what I think is really critical for us. A primary strategic focus for the Dbmc is that we do provide financial support and scholarships. And I have to acknowledge that we do have a very strong corporate donor base, but one of our big risks is if we do lose that donor base, we are unable to sort of really deploy and execute on the work we've set out to do. And that's probably a little bit of my DVM MBA brain coming out here, speaking about how important it is, as Courtney said, for us to have that financial funding and support, but also the interest of individuals who want to come into the profession and stay there. And so I think, as we think about how do we keep people aware, we sort of keep this cultural humility about the work we're doing and continue to sort of grow the donor base. And, people are welcome to reach out to any of us. Please go to all our social media links. We'd be happy to sort of talk to you about what, a support for a student or a scholarship or, whatever aid you could provide. And I say that from a place of being somebody who lives in a community and not for profit. I've been chairing Veterinarians Without Borders internationally for many years, and I saw incredible people come forward during this Ukraine crisis as we've supported over 700 shelters, where I've never seen the power of the human-animal bond be so incredibly strong that people will not leave, right? We've had 85-year-old people who cannot get out of our country in a humanitarian crisis, taking care of 80 dogs, and we can't get food or help those people if we don't have these donors. And that is no different in an analogous manner to the work we're doing with Dbmc, which is how do we move society forward and create change. And I think this is really important work. And so I just want to encourage people, if they want to reach out to us about being a supporter or a sponsor, we're here to listen.
Oh, great. So that was going to be one of my follow-up questions. Do you take individual donations? I was going to be shocked if you said no, but.
No,
I'll welcome all donations, Lisa. We welcome all. Yes.
So yes, if you go to the website, there certainly is a link there for finding ways to get involved and scholarships and all of those types of things, volunteering as well. So, what do you see, Kemba, long term for Dvmc, right? Because this is diversity work is long. You have to have the long horizon view of things. To Courtney's point as well, that kind of patience.
Oh, I thought we were done. I thought we were done next year. Like diversity, it's done, right? We're finished. We reached the finish line.
Again, last week I was at a meeting, 10 people did not speak to me. No, we are.
Yeah, a great question, Lisa. So when I think about it personally, the first person that I ever saw practicing veterinary medicine was my veterinarian who was vaccinating our dogs. That gentleman happened to be an African-American male. And it never occurred to me how important that was until now, because when I saw him in the practice of veterinary medicine, it was completely within my realm of possibility. Just like I saw the mailman and the dentist and the pharmacist, this was like, oh, it's possible to have a career like this. So when I think about the long-term goals of Dvmc long-term wants a profession that is so diverse that becoming a veterinarian, a veterinary technician, a veterinary practice manager is well within the realm of possibilities for that young person. Right. And it shouldn't be something that your parents are like, oh, I don't know if you should do that. It should just be in the conversation when you think about what do you want to do when you grow up. Yeah. So I think that, diversifying the profession is really important, because the other thing that I would remind the audience is when you look at the veterinary oath, and the veterinary oath is very similar to the oath that veterinary technicians take. We take an oath that says we are going to use our professional skills and our knowledge for the benefit of society. So before we even talk about a dog or a cat, we talk about society. And I think it's incredibly important that the veterinary profession get better about thinking about society.
Woo, mic drop. Yeah, mic drop moment. Yes. I mean, I think that that is such a really important point, because I think that sometimes we all get kind of a little bit more narrowly focused, and we forget that, while veterinary medicine is concerned about the animal is not like, oh, I've made an appointment on the app.
Right. Right. Nor is that animal writing you a check to pay for you for those services.
Exactly. Like, I tell people all the time, like when Barkley, bless his little heart, can kind of, take himself to the vet and make his own, pet desk out, pull up the app and make his appointment and go handle his business without me or my debit card, then we don't have to talk about me.
Right.
Right. But it's pretty reliant on my participation in his healthcare. So we're seeing, what I'm hearing is that this group is going to be around for a long time then.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, nothing,
right? But certainly there is still going to be a critical need several years from now.
Absolutely, there's going to be a critical need. I mean, I think Jen did such a nice job about talking to us in the beginning about the lack of the appropriate number of veterinarians in the appropriate fields of service. So what about large animal? What about ambulatory? What about food animal? We have so many needs, right? I mean, COVID has just exposed the tie between human health, animal health, environmental health. When we look at it, we know that we need more veterinarians. We need more veterinary technicians. And if we are going to be successful at that, then it is upon us to say, welcome to our profession. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what it sounds like. And we have to present that in a way that folks who are considering professions will consider veterinary medicine. Because if we are unable to do that and our profession cannot sustain itself, it will be because those of us who are in the profession have not done enough to open the door and say, welcome.
Well, there you go. Kemba done told y'all. So, no, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Kemba, Jennifer, and Courtney. I really appreciate having you on the show and learning personally more about DVMC. I saw Jennifer with her DVMC swag cup. I picked one of those up myself this summer. So swag is always good. Yep, show it off. So I really look forward to working with DVMC in the future, and certainly through AAVMC. So thank you for being on the show to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for having us. It's really been incredible. And we consider this transformational work. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to sit at this table with you so we can bring people into this very rewarding and noble profession. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So this has been another episode of Diversity and Inclusion on Air. To my guests, Kemba, Jennifer, and Courtney. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast app. Be sure to also visit us on SoundCloud and check out some of our playlists. We have wonderful grouped shows to kind of cover various topics. So be sure to check that out. And we will be back again soon. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.